You don't explode. You don't lash out. You don't create drama. You sit quietly. And inside your mind, there is a storm. You replay conversations. You dissect tone changes. You analyze pauses. You predict outcomes that haven't happened yet. Outwardly, you look calm. Internally, you are negotiating with invisible threats. Here's the paradox. The overthinking that once protected you is now exhausting you. As a child, thinking ahead kept you safe. If you could anticipate the mood shift, the criticism, the disappointment, you could prepare. You learned that silence was safer than confrontation. That observation was safer than expression. That self-containment was safer than vulnerability. So, you became your own emotional processor. But now the danger is gone, and your mind doesn't know how to stand down. You don't overthink because you're weak. You overthink because your nervous system never learned how to feel safe. Chronic silent overthinking is often rooted in hypervigilance. Hypervigilance develops in environments where emotional unpredictability is common. A parent's mood could shift without warning. Affection could be withdrawn. Criticism could arrive suddenly. So, your brain adapted. It built a surveillance system. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detector, became highly sensitive. Your nervous system remained slightly activated. Even in calm moments, you learned to scan, to anticipate, to mentally rehearse. If you also experienced emotional neglect, your internal experiences were rarely mirrored or validated. You didn't learn how to express confusion or fear safely. So instead of processing emotions outwardly, you process them cognitively. Thinking replaced feeling. Many silent overthinkers also show patterns of avoidant or anxious attachment. You crave reassurance, but asking for it feels burdensome. You fear being seen as too much, so you say nothing. Your default mode network, responsible for self-referential thought, becomes overactive. Instead of resting, it loops. It replays, it analyzes, it predicts. This isn't intelligence alone. It's protection. The true cost of silent overthinking is not stress. It's isolation. Because no one knows how much you're carrying, you appear composed, measured, rational. But inside, you are running simulations of worst-case scenarios. You lose spontaneity. You lose ease. You lose presence. Carl Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Overthinking feels logical, but it is often fear disguised as strategy. You fear being judged. You fear being misunderstood. You fear abandonment if you say the wrong thing, so you say nothing. Seneca observed, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And the silent overthinker suffers endlessly in imagination, not because reality is unbearable, but because unpredictability once was. Rilke spoke of living the questions, but you don't live the questions. You attempt to solve them before they exist. And in doing so, you sacrifice peace. There is an invisible grief here. The grief of never feeling mentally at rest. The grief of never fully trusting your environment. The grief of carrying conversations long after they have ended. This child grows up, and they become adults who look thoughtful, but feel chronically tense. You might recognize these patterns. In relationships, you analyze texts before sending them. You reread messages repeatedly. You assume shifts in tone mean rejection. In conflict, you replay arguments for days. You think of better responses hours too late. You avoid confrontation to prevent escalation. In career, you overprepare. You double-check excessively. You fear making visible mistakes. In self-worth, you measure yourself against invisible standards. You fear being exposed as incompetent, even when capable. In boundaries, you over-explain. You mentally rehearse saying no, and then say yes anyway. In emotional regulation, you intellectualize feelings. You dissect them instead of experiencing them. You stay in your head to avoid vulnerability. These are coping mechanisms. They were intelligent adaptations in unpredictable environments. But now, they create the very anxiety they aim to prevent. Unlearning begins when you notice the loop, not to shame yourself, but to interrupt it. Healing for the silent overthinker is not about stopping thought. It's about restoring safety. Inner child work asks gently, when did it become unsafe to express uncertainty? Shadow work explores the fear beneath the analysis. The fear of being wrong, rejected, exposed. Nervous system regulation becomes essential. Breathing exercises, somatic awareness, grounding practices. Because overthinking is not solved in the mind alone. It is calmed in the body. Practice speaking before you feel fully prepared. Practice tolerating small misunderstandings. Practice letting conversations end without replay. Allow imperfection. As Jung reminded us, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you calculated yourself to be, not who you predicted would be safest, but who you are without rehearsal. And remember, your mind is brilliant. It kept you safe when you needed it most, but you are allowed to rest now. You are allowed to trust now. You are allowed to speak, even if your voice shakes. If this resonated with the storm inside you, share it with someone who looks calm but thinks endlessly. And if you want deeper psychological insight into the patterns shaping your life, subscribe and stay. Because awareness is the first quiet step toward freedom. And always remember, the goal is not to be fixed, but to become whole.